Clearly means a lot to our family during this difficult time, and I know it would have been a great deal to my dad. As my sister said, for those of you who knew my dad, you knew that he was a man of few words, and when he did speak, it was probably because he was going to say something and try to make you laugh. My dad had a wonderful sense of humor. Even after the cancer made him sickly and the multiple strokes made it difficult for him to communicate, he maintained that sense of humor until the very end. My mom had a variety of pain-relieving drugs at her disposal to make my dad comfortable, but she didn't want to be constantly sedating him and giving him all the drugs, so she tried to temper it a little bit. But just last week, my dad requested strong stuff, and when my sister Gail asked him on a scale of 1 to 10, how's your pain? He said 10, of course, and Gail said, Dad, you'd be crying if you were a 10. And then at that point, he makes that face and went, ooh. Trying to be convincing. There are also some jokes and gags mixed in there that aren't appropriate to share here, but certainly share on another day outside the church. Since my dad was a man of few words, you probably don't know a lot about him. I'd like to take the opportunity to share a little bit about his story. My dad was born in Manila to two hardworking parents. His father worked in the iron and gold mines in the Philippines. His mother started selling rice on the side of the road and eventually opened a little grocery store. It was common for people to purchase stuff, but actually pay for it later. And his mom, my grandmother, would walk up the mountain to collect payments until the day she died. I imagine these two individuals made a huge impression on my dad with a valuable place on hard work. My grandparents actually worked so much that my dad was primarily raised by his siblings. He was the youngest of several siblings. As a kid growing up in the Philippines during World War II, he saw some pretty horrible things and had some close calls. He saw people who ended up paying for their lives, in the town square. An artillery shell crashed through the roof of their home and didn't go off. And he claims the dog disappeared. And they always suspected that the invading soldiers, took them as a treat for a meal. He loved telling me that they were so poor that they would hang toyo, which is like a dried Filipino fish, from the ceiling around the dinner table. They just smell it while they eat rice. So I think that was a version of that. I walked 5 miles in the snow to get to school. Filipino version of this. As far as I knew, his family had a middle-class life. So, like during the war, must have had some kind of lasting effect on him, but I really didn't tell you much way. I didn't know a lot about what he did for fun back then, but I know his uncle was a ring boxer for boxing matches, and he did a lot of watching boxing growing up, so it's no surprise that I grew up watching some of the greatest fighters of all time. Leonard, Hagler, Hearns, Chavez, Tyson, Roy Jones Jr., Oscar De La Hoya, Mayweather, and of course, Manny Pacquiao. And though the outcome wasn't what my dad was hoping for, he did get to watch the long-awaited Pacquiao Mayweather fight before he passed. My dad loved playing pool. As a matter of fact, he told me a story that he used to hustle with this guy, Efren Reyes, who ended up being one of the top pool players in the world. My dad was in college, and Efren Reyes was like a middle school kid or an elementary school kid, but he was a prodigy. And they'd go to the pool hall, and everybody would bet on this prodigy, and the prodigy would throw a match, and they'd just split money at the end. So, he was a pretty good pool player, though. He won some local tournaments, and he wasn't too shabby. But he also enjoyed playing the piano. Though the only thing I ever heard him play was Scott Choplin's The Entertainer. I guess he had that committed to muscle memory, because that's all I ever heard. But he was really good at it, and he played it very, very well. But he did suffer some atrophy in his hands due to a condition called multifocal motor neuropathy, for which he received regular treatments. You may have noticed his hands were, kind of skinny, and his feet were the same way. But despite the handicap, he constantly figured out ways to work around it any way he could. And as Gail mentioned, he'd build additions to the house, and he'd get really creative with tools just because he didn't have the dexterity in his hands anymore, but he'd always get it done. So I guess it was fitting also that he was our Google doctor, because he really didn't want to become a doctor. Medical seemed to be the field of his relatives, but he wanted to pursue a degree that his mom would most likely get the opportunity to see him graduate when she was older. best student. But he did work hard, and he never stopped learning. Even as an adult, as Gail mentioned, we might not sure with a computer or over a book or over a circuit board where you test out different circuits and see what they did. And I guess through all the hard work that his parents passed down to him, he ended up becoming a pretty brilliant engineer. He was successful in developing several inventions and patents. After college, he started a successful construction company that he eventually walked away from and pursued his life in the United States. He stopped for my dad to find work when he got here. So he actually took a job as an electrician in Ohio before finding a job in Montana as an engineer. He enjoyed telling me the story about when he worked as an electrician in the factory in Ohio, how his boss was so impressed about his knowledge about electricity, not knowing that he was a degreed electrical engineer, and they offered him a whole 10 cents an hour more to stay, because he really had valued what he was doing over there. But he never stopped working or learning. Like Gail said, he was always drawing stuff on the back of the napkin. He was during one of our games, trying to figure out the next problem. So he was always problem solving. Baltimore, Maryland, 1974, he met a woman 15 years his junior year, he mentioned turned out to be the love of his life. My mom. My parents had a bond that most would envy. As a matter of fact, I could probably count on one hand. Every time I see them fight, we just didn't fight that much. Which from a marriage perspective and a parenting perspective is pretty amazing. Anyone who knows my parents knows that my dad had a pretty good. He was the king of the castle, but he was a benevolent king, so it was okay. My mom was 100% dedicated to him and really took care of him in a way that's not really common these days. I mean, she went 100%, 110%. My mom was just as fortunate to have my dad. One thing I've heard from her over and over again since he's passed is how good he was to her. In the last couple months, my dad has really struck me physically. My mom worked tirelessly to do whatever she could to make him better and to make sure he was comfortable. Her tireless devotion, the final months really epitomized the love they had for each other. Thank you, Mom, for everything you did, for me. As a dad, he had a gentle and quiet demeanor. He wasn't overly affectionate. For Gail and I always knew he was very loved and cared for. The times he got to me, when he was happiest and most proud, include Gail's at my college graduation, our weddings, birth of his grandchildren, Eulogy and Reagan. More recently, though, not as significant, he wasn't able to attend any Logan soccer games. He was sick, so I'd report him, and he'd get to catch the goals and stuff. So he got a kick out of that. It's pretty proud. I'll be forever grateful for the many things he taught me. I got to ride a bike, I got to drive. More importantly, he taught me not to take things too seriously. He taught me to take risks, enjoy life, the value of hard work, the value of persistence in achieving your goals, and the value of helping those in need. Because he was a man of few words, he didn't really verbalize how much he appreciated his friends and family. I know he felt incredibly fortunate to have all of you in his lives. For the people, who came out and saw him, not just when he was sick, but throughout his life, especially in the time when he was down. People who entertained his corny jokes and his magic tricks. People we went on trips with. People made him laugh. People in times of need that really came to his aid when he needed it. And different things at the end, helping him out when he was sick. People supported his business, favorite causes. But especially when he was sick, there were a lot of people who stopped by providing moral support, dropping on food, or helping out my mom and my dad. So for my family and on behalf of my dad, I just want to thank you guys. It's really touching the last couple of days here. The impression left by my dad, friends and families. Heard about what a great engineer he was, what a great sense of humor he had, and how much he helped so many people without any expectations for payback or recognition. things I heard most over the past few days is what a kind man he was. Tagalog, there's a word, it's bayet, which means he's just a kind individual. The most important thing I've learned from my dad is that once he left this world, none of the awards or the accolades mattered. Outside of being able to take care of your friends and family, which my dad did, I'm not sure there's